And we're back. This is the Colombia Calling podcast, episode 543, segment 3. And we're talking to none other, the legend, that is Tim Buendia, or Tim and Gur, I want to say. Originally, he can correct me in a second, originally from Holland, but really the adopted son of Aracataca. So Gabriel Garcia Marquez, you remember, Nobel Prize winning author from Colombia, that's his hometown, his birth town of Aracataca. And well, Tim's joining us from Los Angeles, where he currently lives. But we're going to be talking about Aracataca, what's been going on, the Netflix series of 100 Years of Solitude coming out on December the 11th, and the fact that Tim hasn't been back since leaving Aracataca 9 years ago. It's been that long since he came back. So welcome back on the Colombia Calling podcast, Tim.
Hello, Richard. Hello, everybody. It is an honor and a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me. Yeah, I'm excited to talk about all these things. Yeah,
it's amazing to me because you have been so immersed in Gabriel Garcia Marquez, the works, but also the location of Aracataca and promotion of this town. And you're up there in Los Angeles, but of course that's because your son is a US citizen, so you have to be up there. But how did it take you 9 years to get back?
So I never wanted to leave Aracataca in the first place.
Okay.
I would have stayed, but I remember it was I was invited to speak. Everything was fine. Everything was fine. I was invited to speak at a university in New York, and I
Nice.
spoke about Garcia Marquez and Aracataca, and then I went back home, and there was my then partner and my son, who was only 6 months old at that time, and my partner was like, "We got to get out of here. I can't be here anymore." And it hit me. That hit me so hard. And 6 months later, we were gone. And so I never wanted to leave.
Yeah.
And then the years went by. I was here in LA, adjusting. I enjoy living in smaller towns, or even in the middle of nowhere. I would love to live somewhere where I can see the stars every night. That's my main. So it kind of trying to get back on my feet here in LA. That's why
Yeah.
it took so long to get back on one's feet. Because when I was in Aracataca, when I had my business there, my bed and breakfast, and doing tours and working with the city, it was such an amazing time of my life. I was able to help build bridges between people from all over the world and Macondo itself. I was
Yeah.
able to help to build those bridges and give people a little bit more of an opportunity to get to understand the history and culture of an entire continent. So then when I was in LA, it took me many years and trying to scrape by on things that I only, because I knew what I wanted to do with my life. But then
Yeah.
when you're in LA, you can't do it. So it took me many years to finally, I was like, okay, I just got to jump in. So I think maybe a couple of years ago, 3 years ago, I started editing my poetry. I was like,
Yeah.
I gotta, once I edit my poetry, then at least I have something physical, that it is not all just a dream. It has not all just been a dream in Macondo. It is real, and here I have the proof. And once I had the poetry, it empowered me to go back, um, to dive into it again more. And over the last year and a half, I've been back 5 times. I'm going back again in 2 weeks, and I'm planning to go there about once a month or so, every 6 weeks.
That's cool.
Uh,
You talk about you talk about stars in Los Angeles, and I just say thank you. You sent me 3 copies of your book, the Poesia de Macondo, poetry from Macondo. and you have a poem, The Stars. But of course, I think it's obviously it's quite metaphysical, but at the same time, now that I know that, I mean, you mentioned it and brought it up that you miss seeing the stars, you're obviously thinking of the stars above Aracataca when you write it.
So I think more stars in general, because I've seen stars in Aracataca, but I've been to other places where I was able to see more stars. so
Okay.
so
Okay.
it is, yeah, it is more the stars and just the spaciousness and the very the existence that we can experience only then, the depth of experience.
Okay. Well, I'm going to hold it up for those of us watching on camera. That's Poesia de Macondo. Can people get this online?
Yeah, just Google Poesia de Macondo and it will take you right where you can get it.
Perfect. Now, Tim, let's go back a little bit and start from the very beginning. In what year did you sort of decide I got to open up something here in Aracataca? Because that town should be a key destination for anyone interested in the literature of the region, Gabriel Garcia Marquez and more. And yet it is kind of a backwater. I remember when I first went was in 2007. I was taken on a press trip by Pro Colombia, who took me to see the museum. Now, is it the Buendia Museum or is it the Garcia Marquez Museum? We don't know, but tell me how it all came about.
So I arrived in Colombia either 2007 or 2008. I arrived there, and before that, I had read 100 Years of Solitude when I was living in Peru, in the Amazon jungle, and somebody gave me the book. They were like, "You're gonna love this book." I read a page and a half. I'm like, "I'm not gonna love this book. I can't read it." And my friend was like, "Here, why don't you read this book instead? The La Crónica de una Muerte Anunciada, the Chronicle of a Death Foretold. Why don't you read it instead? Because he is such an amazing author, and even if you don't like the magical realism, if you don't understand it, read this." And I read it. I loved it. Okay, give me 100 Years of Solitude back. I'll try it again. I read it. I didn't get it. I read it. I didn't get it. And not just because the magical realism, I didn't make sense in my head. I did not, maybe I was too rigid in my thinking, or maybe I was stubborn in my Christian upbringing.
Okay.
Haven't been a Christian in decades, don't worry. You can cut that out. And then I arrived, so I was living in Santa Marta. I was teaching English in Santa Marta. And a friend of mine invited me to Aracataca. I was in Aracataca, and a couple of friends that I met over there, they're still friends, they showed me around town. And they explained the origin of 100 Years of Solitude and the history of Garcia Marquez and how everything came together. And I was like, whoa, I was blown away. I was like, this book that I read that didn't make any sense to me, just knowing a couple of hours of context, of history and culture, and you're like, whoa, it's a whole different experience. Later I read some people said 100 Years of Solitude gives better insight in Latin America than 100 theses together. And it made sense. And I was like, I want to be a part of this. Whatever this is, I want to be a part of this because this is amazing.
And then over time, I guess, because you were there as like a resident in Aracataca, and I know you used to sit outside your house with a red light bulb and a green light bulb, because I can remember this from when we talked last. And you'd be reading or thinking, and if the red light bulb was on, no one could approach you. And if the green light bulb was on, you were open for conversation. True or false? True or false?
I don't know. I don't remember that. I don't think so.
I think you said it in our last interview, which was more than 10 years ago. But
I
so
don't.
this, yeah. This said, you do cut an interesting character for Aracataca. Like many Dutch, you are above average in height. You've got long, flowing blonde hair. You used to walk around. I know you did because you helped me once buy a walking stick, not because I needed it, but for I think for uh, to, to to show some sort of distinguished nature. I think was the way we put it. So, I mean, what was the reaction to Tim arriving and living in Aracataca?
So about the walking sticks. So I had a bunch of them in my bed and breakfast, and I would lend them to the guests. And and at one point, people from Aracataca they were asking me. They were like, Tim, why does everybody wear walking sticks? Is that some kind of European thing? I was like, no, it's just a thing here in Macondo. I said,
Yeah.
and
So yeah, go on.
and I remember, I must have told you, it is partly to challenge people's sense of reality and
Hmm.
to make the locals feel like they are living in a Nobel Prize winning novel. Because
Okay.
if they don't have that sentido de pertenencia, the sense of
Hmm.
belonging, if they don't have it, they're not going to be able to participate in this awakening that is so much opportunity for all of Colombia.
It's true. It's true. And then over time, I guess the Gypsy residence, which is your bed and breakfast, that was born, and it became a destination within Aracataca itself. What has happened in the last 9 years to the Gypsy residence?
So when I left, um, so I closed it when I left Colombia. So I
Yeah.
left Aracataca 1 month before Garcia Marquez died.
Hmm.
1 month before I left, I had to close it. And I was the only person working in tourism over there, owning a bed and breakfast. Nobody else was doing that, so nobody understood the value of what it was. The business from a business perspective. And I was like, I can't sell this. I didn't own the building. I rented the building. And I was
Yeah.
like, I can't sell the name and the website for like $1,000 or $2,000. That doesn't make sense. Like I
Mm.
want to prefer to keep it and bring it back to life later. So now for a year and a half, I've been bringing it back to life.
Mm.
And it has so much information about all things Aracataca and Garcia Marquez. And I think because it is such an opportunity and because I love and many of the listeners, I'm sure they love Colombia and we want the very best and I think we can, if we work together, we can achieve much more. So and for me, so partly I want to share insightful information, um, the history and culture not only of 100 Years of Solitude, but of Garcia Marquez, because Garcia
Yeah.
Marquez was so much more than his novels. His journalism is like mind blowing. His perspectives, his insights on love, on government, on culture. And just now, I'm reading with my son uh, the the story of a shipwrecked sailor.
Oh wow.
We're reading it. We started a couple of weeks ago, and
Yeah.
last night I read it part of the bedtime story. And and I think at this morning in the car, I brought him to school, and I told my son, I think you must have fallen asleep when this sentence came up in the book. But the guy sitting on the raft after the first night on the ocean, right? Sitting on the raft, and he couldn't sleep all through the night. And he sits there, and the sun comes up, and he said that was the first time ever in his 20 years of life that he was completely happy. This guy just on a shipwreck after is like, whoa. And
Yeah.
Garcia Marquez throws so many pearls in his stories and in his journalism, and I think not just for Colombia, but it means so much for the rest of the world.
When before we get into the website a bit more, because I've checked it out and you are putting a whole load of information up there again. I've seen it's been renewed and so on. But did you, when you left Aracataca, because if I seem to remember, I remember you being on the news talking about the lack of water in Aracataca. Your son must have been newborn, and I remember seeing it on the news. You were like washing him in water that the water that comes in bags and so
I
on.
got in trouble for that. Yeah.
You got in trouble because you left under a negative shadow, didn't you, because of the politics of the region?
So I felt once I knew I was gonna leave, I felt like I was free to say things which other people couldn't say because they
Uh-huh.
were afraid.
Yeah.
And for example, the water quality over there, that was a big thing, but also corruption.
Yeah.
Uh, and I know when Piri, I don't know if he's still on
Mm.
TV.
Sometimes he's still there.
Okay, yeah, I know that when the Piri show came over and did an entire episode, I I remember that I said like a law that they cut out, which was pretty for the better. Because I spoke a lot about corruption because um, corruption is not going to work. It's not going to work for the people,
Mm.
and many things in life, as they are in life, we can do whatever we want. When people work
Mm.
together, we can achieve anything we want. But our egos get in the way
Mm.
every single time. We
You
want
know,
more, and
it,
I felt that at that time, when I was going to leave, I was no longer afraid to call out the people,
mm.
and especially some local politicians. They were not very happy with that, and I was fine with that. I'm
Mm.
fine with. I'm now in.
Yeah.
I'm currently on the board of directors of a local TV station over
Oh,
here,
yeah.
and we have corruption going on, and the local politicians seem to be involved, and I'm
Mm.
calling them out. I'm sending emails to the entire membership, and I feel like that's something we have to do, and we got to be fearless sometimes and call out that kind of stuff, and that's what I did in
But
Aracataca. Yeah,
what one thing is being fearless in Los Angeles, another thing is being fearless in the interior of the Magdalena department with all of that.
sure,
There's
sure,
business interests. I mean, the exploitation that's taken place from cotton and then bananas, of course, the banana massacre, then of course water, and of course whatever else, the coal that goes through on the train,
yeah,
the train through Macondo, let's say. I mean, it's just one thing after another. How many times has supposedly, an aqueducto been put in or a water service been put into Aracataca, and it's never there? so,
yeah,
so where is
yeah.
that money? I guess that gives you a certain. I mean, being a foreigner, of course, gives you a certain degree of security, but at the same time, you knew you were leaving, so you spoke out. And will this have any? Will this have any negative impact for all of the, let's say, traveling back every month to Rakataka?
And no, so I don't believe so. I think that every time I go, I think the people, or since those years that I said those things publicly, the
Hmm.
people who were in charge of the government, they are no longer involved, and they were the only ones who were negatively affected by it.
Hmm.
And so now every time I go back, I just feel 100% love. Yeah,
Yeah.
I feel
And
100%
uh,
love.
has anyone ever told you that you should run for political office there in Rakataka?
Yeah, yeah. They told me
I've
that
been.
when I lived there 10 years ago, but now they do it again. But they tell you as well, I imagine.
All the time, but there's no chance that I'm going to be a mayor. And I'm not. I don't want to be. So I do more outside of politics to help influence things than I would be able to do within politics and within the, let's say, the elitist structure and the feudal structure of how politics is managed by a dozen families in the whole region. I wouldn't be able to work within that. So I don't know. I don't want to get into politics directly.
Yeah.
Tim, tell me something. I mean, this is a great time to be talking about Aracataca, Macondo, the Gypsy Residence. The website is the gypsyresidence.com.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. So there's everything on there that we can find, all sorts of information. But let's talk about what's coming up on December the 11th on Netflix. Give us some insights. Tell us all about this.
So they decided, of course, Garcia Marquez always said he did not want movies to be made from his work, especially not 100 Years of Solitude. And that makes sense because in the time of movies, a 2-hour movie couldn't do anything. It would not be able to do anything about 100 Years of Solitude. And of course, once he passed, he was no longer in charge of his legacy. And his sons decided it is in the world's best interest to show it. And I think Garcia Marquez would have agreed. Like 16 hours, that's huge. You can tell 100 Years of Solitude in 16 hours. So I think what I've seen, I like the trailer and images and stories of people involved. It looks like an amazing production that Netflix pulled off. It is the largest Spanish language production ever, and it just looks so impressive. And of course, what matters more than anything is the feeling of something. Does it feel like when you read a book? When I read some of my favorite books, and when I then saw them on the big screen afterwards, I was like, I shouldn't have come. But this is different. This is different because it is not just the story. It is so much the messaging behind it. It is because Garcia Marquez he teaches so many things through his beautiful narrative and character creations. He shows a world that many of us otherwise would not understand. Many people in the West would otherwise not understand the history and culture of Colombia or Latin America. And I think that because just earlier you mentioned like the banana massacre, and I think that the United Fruit Company, with my gallery that I just opened, art gallery that I just opened, is actually inside the commissariato of the United Fruit Company. It's in the original building of the United Fruit Company, and so the United Fruit Company still exists. They just changed their name, Chiquita Bananas. And I think this is such a great pretext to discuss all of the history that they, not just in Colombia, but also in the rest of Latin America, that they have caused, because they never came clean. They never came clean with any of this. So I think that might be the greatest blessing of the Netflix production, is giving them an opportunity to come clean. And then it's not just them, because the train, now it is carbon, as you said, coal. And they're building a second carril. They're building a second train rails through town. And all of that is wide open in the discussion, especially, again, through 100 Years of Solitude.
The symbolism of you opening and the importance, I would say, of you opening your gallery, the Galleria de Gypsy, there in that building is very powerful. Have you got information in the gallery explaining to visitors about the banana massacre and so on?
So we only opened like a couple of weeks ago, and we're still, and that was like the pre-opening. So we're still setting everything up right now. We're gonna have the real opening in 2 weeks when I'm there with more things going on, and but it's we are moving towards that. We don't have that yet because we're still putting the paintings in place. but it's so important to share that history. So we'll
Yeah.
definitely have something that points to that. Yeah.
So who's your let's say business partner in this in the Gypsy Gallery?
So Galeria de Gypsy, it is called.
Yeah. Yeah.
It is Melkin Merchant. Melkin Merchant is a local artist of Aracataca. He creates amazing art. It's beautiful. He's been doing so actually when maybe 14, 15 years ago, 15 years ago, I was about to open my bed and breakfast, the Gypsy Residence, and I was already preparing everything. And I remember I was walking along the railroad and I saw two kids. I think they were 14-year-old or something with some paintings. They just walked home from school and I saw them. And I was like, hey, what do you guys got? And yeah, they showed me the painting. I was like, that's really good. That's really nice. And so we had an exposition after that in the Gypsy Residence. And this kid, so many years later, so he studied so much more, and he now it is well, he teaches painting, but so teaching painting and painting is his full-time job. And
Yeah.
and also the messaging. It's all about you can find some of his materials online, and some of it is really insightful, and some of it is really painful. Because he also talks about some of the displaced history and trauma, and so I've been working with him, and and we also expose local artists, but he is the main artist right now. So yeah, it's such an honor to be able to participate in that, to
And
show that kind of work.
he's got a great name, as if plucked from the pages of a Garcia Marquez novel as well. That's what I was liking about it. So I mean, you've done this. You over your time in Aracataca, you did, was it Melquiades' tomb, and you did all sorts of events, and you had the Gypsy Residence. Now you've got the gallery. What is the long-term vision? Will you return to Aracataca when your son is of age?
So I, in the past, I've made plans before, and God would go hysterical at my plans. He would laugh at them. Um, so I like to make plans for the next couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
Because I know like it's 7 more years before my son is going to be 18 years old. The first thing I want to do then is drive around in an RV for months. But that's the plan. That's the only plan I have for 7 years from now. So in the next 2-3 years, that Netflix is going to, well, I think they're going to be releasing in the next couple of years, because it's going to be 2 seasons, right? Their
Yeah.
show, 2 times 8 episodes. So I think during that time, with that momentum, Aracataca can be, and this is a new golden age. They're going to go. You can also go to nuevaepocadorada.com, and you can see about the new golden age for Aracataca. And for me, I think that is my, because I don't need to own a business, or I just want to live somewhere below the stars and have food and have animals around me. But my main thing is I want to participate in, with this momentum, to create a place where people can come together and build understanding, where people from all over the world, because that's what happened in Macondo. You had Arabs, you had Italians, you had freed slaves from Africa, you had the indigenous, you had the United Stations, people from all over the world coming together. And I think that's what we need. That's what we need. And that's what I foresee Aracataca to become more of.
So we can, despite, for example, Mompos not being included, people and Aracataca not being included in the Netflix series, we need to see this for what it is, and really the most massive opportunity for us with businesses or interests, or love for the region, is to piggyback on their marketing their marketing campaign to promote places in this region. So your let's say epiphany to start publishing your poetry and get the website back up and open the gallery, this is all coming at the right time.
Yeah, I hope so. I believe so. And when I published the poetry, people were like, and now people ask like, "Hey, are you selling? Are you selling?" I'm like, I'm not. I'm
Yeah.
not spending $1 on promotion. I'm not going to spend $1. I'm going to have Netflix do that. I don't want to.
Yeah.
And
I am going to be shamefacedly jumping on Netflix for this.
yeah, but we, and especially Colombia, we have the right because it is an opportunity, and it is. I remember when a Disney movie came out about the girl and the house of the family,
Encanto.
Encanto. I didn't know it was going to be about Colombia, but it was beautiful, and I loved it. The
Mm.
atmosphere, the music, and I thought it was such a positive view on Colombia.
Mm-hmm.
I remember when I moved to LA 10 years ago, and people are like, "Oh, where did you come from?" It's like, "Yeah, from Colombia." They were like, "Whoa, isn't that dangerous?" And
Nice.
all people knew was Narcos.
Yeah.
And now when people ask, "Oh, I've been here 10 years. Where were you before?" "I was in Colombia." "Oh, I want to go." "Oh, my
Yeah.
cousin just went there." "Oh, I'm going to go on a bachelorette party." All
Right.
kinds of positive. Yeah. It is such a different view. Just last week, I met this lady. She was working with investors. She was like, "Hey, is it with Petro? Do you have faith in him?" But she was working with investors in oil and coal, and she was a little bit afraid. She was like, "Do you have faith in him?" I was like, "Sure, yeah. No, he's been around forever. He's not going to break. He's not going to break anything like a newbie would do, like Trump, for example."
God, don't.
It's very-
Oh, don't. We've got that coming up. You're there. We don't need, let's not talk about that. I've got to do other work on that before long. But um, it's a fascinating time, and it is true. The I mean, it's a 180-degree, obviously, change in uh, the opinions and, of course, like image of Colombia, but there's still so much to do. And we know Colombia is a hard sell, but it has become more fashionable and people are more interested. And again, we say like 100 Years of Solitude will be a huge push for it. And
yeah,
I can only hope. I can only hope that we can build on it, and maybe some of the uncertainty and instability in the world can um, decrease a little bit or diminish a little bit, so that tourism can once again flourish. But the right type of tourism, those who want to go culturally and really immerse themselves in a place,
yeah,
Aracataca and so on. I think for me that's the most important thing, rather than, I mean, it would be good, obviously, for bus tours to stop in Aracataca, but you really want them to immerse themselves to get the full feeling. But I mean, I've been a few times. I should have been more to Aracataca, but my feeling there is that there is an ambience that is unlike anywhere else in Colombia. That's the truth. And I mean, perhaps you can dwell on that since you were the long-term resident there.
yeah. So I think that so there's so many beautiful towns in Colombia. Some are beautifully historic. Some have the best climate. Some have the most beautiful people. And I think in Aracataca, and I'm not. Other people have told me as well. The people are so real. They are so present. You walk around in the street, and if you're not from there, people will immediately know, and they will greet you, and they will take you by the hand, and they will do anything they can to make your experience as great as possible. And I think that walking around the streets, which I've done, I've walked there for miles and miles and miles. I was doing so many tours when I lived there, around every other day, walking tours, and the people, they are not just friendly. They do not just believe that that what did they believe? They are excited about the rest of the world. They see you, they want to engage with you, and they want to share with you the best of their culture. And I'm sure that happens in many places around the world. But in Aracataca, you will see that the people are so approachable. They're not gonna try and scam you. If a scammer comes up, other people will tell you, hey, this is a scam. Everybody knows each other. And I think that is a great benefit.
Why do you think the people are like this? Can you attribute it to something?
So the history of Colombia, the history of Aracataca has had many ups and downs.
Mm,
There have been a golden age. There have been a couple of golden ages, and in between the golden ages, there was a lot of suffering. And so Garcia Marquez was born right before the Banana Massacre. Uh, he was born in 27. Banana Massacre was in 28. And after the Banana Massacre, the decline of Macondo, there was the banana company left, and so they went into kind of a black hole
mm.
for many years until the marimba. The marimba, that was a
Marimbera, yeah,
yeah, that was a little bit of a golden age. They would grow marijuana in the mountains. There was a small golden age for some people. There
yeah,
was money again, and then of course um, that is over, and of course there's still some of that, but like it was, definitely not. So then the economy knows many ups and downs, and people understand what it is to have hardship. But people also, through that hardship, they understand that the real joy you can experience with your family, with your friends. And I think the people in Rakataka are not materialistic, hardly at all. Many people, they don't have much. And of course, people want some stuff here and there to make life easier, but they're happy not having much. People are not on the phone all day long. When I walk around in LA, people are on the phone. Everybody's on the phone all the time. In Rakataka, people are not. They are right there. They're in reality. And and I think to have a little bit of that groundedness, it's important to experience happiness.
they sort of. I think that's a very accurate and very sensitive way of looking at it. Of course, to make a comparison between Los Angeles and Aracataca is kind of it's almost a schizophrenic change. I don't know how you do it. So
Sure,
I find it hard enough between Bogota and Monpós, and so
sure.
my kids after a while in Monpós, my kids forget how to cross the road in Bogota and so on. So it's that kind of thing. But I think there are good times ahead. Yeah, I think really that's how I feel. I think hopefully we've well, at least we could go into the next golden era and move on and pull a place like Aracataca. I don't want to say out of its slumber, but out of the because it's not in a slumber, as you say. People are present. It's there, and they live and they work and their family. But I think maybe pull it out of this invisibility that perhaps it had internationally and certainly nationally as well. I think we need to work so much with Colombians with regards to and you said the word earlier on, an appropriation of what they have here. There's not one
Yeah.
Colombian that wouldn't be proud of Gabriel Garcia Marquez when you talk about it, but then say to them, have you been to Aracataca? Well, no, I drove past it on the way to Santa Marta from Bogota. That's not
Yeah.
the same. That's
Yeah.
not the same. So, I mean, are you doing work? And I mean, a lot of your work obviously is aimed externally, but I think you're making inroads with the Colombians as well, right?
For sure. Yeah. So, especially the locals in Arakataka, because so I'm trying to empower them to be more of a voice for Arakataka themselves.
Hmm.
But also some of these things, some of the challenges are just logistics. Like there's no map of town, for example. There's a tourist, there's no map of town. If people don't have a map of town, then how do they know where they're going to go?
Mm.
Or other logistics. People don't know how to add their business to Google Maps. And it's like, you have a tourist, it's like, oh, where am I going to go? I remember years ago, we had the Lonely Planet. I think that has
Oh,
diminished greatly right now.
oh yeah.
So people use, and if people don't know how to add things to Google Maps, so that is also part of what I'm doing with locals to help people. Or like just last week, I put a friend of mine created an apartment from his house. He separated an apartment, turned it into an Airbnb. So he doesn't know how to put it on Airbnb. Okay, I'll do it for you. And I put it on Airbnb to empower him. Hopefully he's going to take over and do it
Yeah.
himself, because I don't have time to manage like small Airbnbs for someone. But it's just a tiny a tiny space. But I'll definitely get started because I know it is necessary. And
Yeah.
if people from Bogota, from Cartagena go into Aracataca, they're like, where am I going to stay? Oh, there's only 2 Airbnbs. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, that's not going to work. And so
Yeah. You're right.
many of this is logistics. And what I've seen in the year and a half that I've been returning, I've seen a variety of new restaurants, several new hostels, and a more general feel of excitement over the last year and a half. So I see this progress in the people, and I think it's going to be exponential. It
That's
is going to
cool.
be exponential. And if we have the participation of the cataqueros, then it will go very fast.
Well, I hope so. I hope so. I mean, we could use all of this and building on it. But if, as you said, if the cataqueros, as people from Aracataca are known, they are the ones you can help build it. But then, like you've been doing, you're handing it to him over to empower the local people. I think why not? Why shouldn't it grow? I mean, it's starting from very low, so there's a lot of space to fill. I remember when I was there again on this in 2007, the first time when we were we were discussing with the I guess he was like the guard at the station, the railway station. I said, "Oh, you must have been so busy when Gabriel Garcia Marquez and Mercedes Baches, his wife, when they came back on the train that time, that glorious return to Aracataca." And he said, "Oh yeah, there were so many people. There were people everywhere. God, I mean, it was crazy." I said, "Yeah, how did you manage this at the station?" He goes, "Oh yeah, I didn't turn up to work." And I just thought that was perfect. I thought it was absolutely perfect. For me, it
Yeah.
summed up the beauty of it. And it
Yeah.
didn't matter that he didn't turn up for work. He was just good. He knew he was going to be overwhelmed. So that was that.
Yeah.
I love it. Tim, I don't know. Do you know in the top of your head some of your poetry? Would you like to recite some, or should I read something out?
I could recite something in Spanish. I
Yeah.
always have a book right next to me if needed, so I can totally.
Well, how about you recite one of your poems for us to finish this conversation?
Do you have one in mind?
I like Magdalena.
Yeah, I know you like that one, uh,
What else?
but I prefer to read another one.
Okay, you read another one. That's fine.
I I will read. Magdalena has a very interesting story, though, how it came about. I'll tell you another time.
Okay, and the next time. Okay,
I wrote it when I was in the city of Bonda,
where's
Tolima.
that? Okay, Onda,
Oh, sorry, Onda. Sorry, Onda.
Onda, Onda. I was like Bonda. Where's that? Onda, Tolima. Okay, fair enough.
Bonda is in
That's right
Santa
on the.
Marta, actually. I
Okay,
also.
all right, all right. So tell me, which one are you going to read to us then?
So I'm going to read in Spanish a magical stage of the world.
Okay,
Does that work if it is in Spanish?
it's perfect.
Because the English ones are translations, so I prefer not to read those.
Very good.
Escenario mágico del mundo. ¿Qué es un nombre? ¿Qué valor tiene una historia añeja, provocando sonidos de asombro? y gritos de muy lejos. Escuchen, acercando a los aldeanos, con una magia extraordinaria, el murmullo de gitanos. Dime, ¿cuál es tu nombre? El mundo está esperando que te pierdes en la imaginación, que no te encuentre el mundo, buscando en los mapas, preguntando a la gente, esperando a la realización. Los heraldos ya llegaron. Estamos viviendo fechas legendarias, negando a historias abiertamente. No cumplimos con la fama mundial, pero lo hacemos macondianamente. En vez de enseñar el realismo mágico, preferimos tomar frías por esquinas en mediodía, sentados, olvidados entre los monumentos tirados, rodeado por fantasmas de la primera época dorada de Macondo. Sabemos, sin admitir, que en la esperanza del realismo mágico encontramos la salvación. Llegados de todo el mundo, los gitanos volvieron y jamás se irán. Caras desconocidos, actos increíbles, movimientos misteriosos. Un día cercano, Macondo tendrá todo, hasta alfombras en las calles. Las llenaremos con ideas y detalles. Plantemos flores, pintemos casas con todos los colores del espectro. Compremos antorchas para iluminar las puertas. Adornemos con esculturas las plazas y orillas. Cantémonos canciones de inspiración y de amor. Y dime cuál es tu nombre? Recuérdalo profundo. Macondo, escenario mágico del mundo.
Thank you very much. It sounds so much better in Spanish and in your voice. That's a nice poem. That is a nice poem. So look it up. Poesía de Macondo. And let's take a moment to thank Tim Buendia for his time. The studio today has been his car in Los Angeles.
We're in Los Angeles.
I haven't seen you in a long time. Has anyone ever said that you look like the dude out of The Big Lebowski?
Maybe once.
You are a slimmer version, but it's very cool to see you looking very well, and of course you seem happy. And
That's
I
the
think
greatest
that must
compliment, by the way.
yeah.
It's the greatest
You,
compliment to look like the dude. I'm
I
very
think so
grateful.
too. I think so. I meant it as that indeed. But you seem, as I said, you seem very happy, and you seem. I think obviously the return to Macondo or return to Aracataca, and knowing that you're going to be going almost every month, and you've been 5 times already this year, it's a huge deal. And this obviously has changed your outlook and how you feel about everything. So thank you for sharing it with us.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Richard. It is a pleasure and an honor to be here with you. And it's great that you've been doing this for all these years. So it's amazing. Kudos to you, and kudos for everything that you do for Colombia.
It's been a long time. Sometimes it's peaks and troughs like everything, but I enjoy it, and I really enjoy being able to revisit with people, because it gives it a continuity. So anyway, we need to send people to your website, which is thegypsyresidence.com. And on there, you can find all of the links to poetry, Macondo, Aracataca, and elsewhere, and things that Tim is doing. And if you can, get down there to Aracataca. You won't regret it. When is the inauguration? When is the grand opening of the gallery?
Saturday in 2 weeks.
Okay, Saturday in 2 weeks' time. You heard it here first. This has been Colombia Calling. I've been Richard Mccoll, episode 543. Can you believe it? If you want to support us, please check us out on patreon.com/Colombia Calling. All sorts of bump on there as well. And of course, we have things and prizes and promotions for people there too. It's been an absolute pleasure. We'll be back next week with more episodes, or another episode about something Colombia related. Thank you to Tim Buendia, and goodbye.